Hey, welcome back to the next video of Guardian XOC. Today, as you've probably seen in the title, we're going to be overclocking an i5-655K. That's a Clarkdale LGA 1156 CPU I've got on test bench right here. It's taken me a while to get this system running. We'll talk more about that at the end. And also because of that, I haven't actually tested this CPU on air or water yet to just kind of get an idea of the highest overclock. So that's what we're going to be doing straight on dry ice now. I'm only going to be running Cinebench because of that, and I'm not really going to be caring about the score I get because, like I said, we're just testing it. And so I'll take this opportunity to spend a little bit more time into the actual process of overclocking that I do. Like I said, I haven't really played around with this a lot yet, so it'll be a learning experience. And with that, let's take a look at the system as we usually do. Alright, I realize it's probably getting a little bit old, but for the system, of course, under the CPU pot, we've got the i5-655K HD 3450 just for basic display output. Now for RAM, this is the key difference. I no longer have the 8GB PNY stick. Instead, I have here two 2GB Kingston sticks, and they're only running at 1333 megahertz. I'll probably get a close-up at the stick on the side there so you can see that. And of course, we are running on the Asus P7 P55D motherboard, and we are still on the same Corsair CX 600M down below. Alright, to start things off, we're going to start with a multiplier of 25s to bring a target frequency of 3.857, or just 3.85 gigahertz. And we're going to try to boot that at 1.25 volts on the V-core. As I said, I haven't played around with this much, so we'll see if it boots. try to hit 5.3 gigahertz, and even at 1.7 volts it's doing this, so it might require a few other settings or maybe just more VCore. But either way, I am just going to call this as done. I was able to still finish Cinebench successfully at 5.2 gigahertz, which is it's pretty good actually. So first, to start off closing this video, I'd like to just say that overall, overclocking 655K is actually pretty fun. It's pretty good. I mean, it's a nice overclocker. It's nice having to unlock the multiplier this time. It is only 2 cores, so there is that to consider. It's still kind of slow, regardless of what you do with it, but still pretty fun to play around with. Didn't play with too many different settings there. This isn't exactly the most extensive BIOS either, but it's a pretty good motherboard. Alright, now getting to the talk I wanted to have about the CPU. When I first got my first 655K, which is not what I was benching here, I put in a motherboard and it wouldn't work. With Post, you could change stuff in the BIOS. As soon as I went to Windows, it blue screened. And so I thought, okay, I must have gotten a defective or degraded CPU. Lo and behold, now, one more 655K later, as well as 3 Pentium G6950s, which are also Clarkdale CPUs, I tested all of them and they all had the same problem. They would crash before loading into Windows. So at this point I started thinking there must be another problem. Something else is going on. And I started playing around with some things. It doesn't seem to be anything with the BIOS versions. So when I finally actually started paying attention to the crash codes that I was getting for Windows 7, I realized that it was memory related. So that got me realizing that the memory controller on a Clarkdale CPU can't utilize an 8GB stick of RAM, because that's what I was using. I was just using that PNY Anarchy stick that I've shown in previous videos. So I switched out for 2 2GB sticks of the Kingston RAM that we had in the video, and it worked fine. All 5 of them. And that is like a month later of testing. I finally figured out it's just the RAM. Kind of frustrating. And with that, let's take a closer look at a Clarkdale CPU die. We'll see why this happened. Okay, so here we have a deleted i5 655K. This is actually the first one I bought, not the one that was actually on the test bench for overclocking. I had deleted this because after 2 weeks of not being able to get this past BSOD, I decided to just pull it apart, check a few things. First off, to see if they used solder, which it turns out they did. And I'm actually really surprised now that I know how to get this working. The CPU does actually work, surprisingly. Still, even though I had to break a solder connection on the top here. Okay, so with that, let's actually take a closer look at this package here. As you can see, it's a dual die design for these Clarkdale CPUs. And right here, this is the CPU die, and that's why they use solder. And this really just has 2 32 nanometer cores, and that's it. Well, obviously it has the cache as well. This is the integrated GPU. This is where things get interesting. This is what actually has the memory control. In fact, if I remember correctly, it's right here on this lower section, and then like PCI Express is up here, as well as other I/O controllers with the iGPU. Now they put the memory controller on the GPU die for better memory performance for the GPU, because for the most part, if you have faster RAM access for your graphics processor over your CPU, you'll notice the bigger performance difference in the GPU. That's just a kind of a key thing about how they work. With that, this being a mid-range CPU, that's why all Clarkdale dies only have 2 cores, the memory controller is actually really bad. After doing a bit of further reading on NNTech, I actually found out it's kind of a derivative of a memory controller that was used on X48 and P45 boards. So that's back in the days of DDR2, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty certain that those boards use DDR2. and the memory controller wouldn't have been able to use that much RAM anyways. And from the time period, anyone who had this CPU wouldn't have been using more than probably 6 gigs of RAM. That would have been a pretty high performance system. In fact, I'd be surprised if they were using a dual core for that. Okay, so what can we learn from this? Well, first off, that 655K only cost me about $23. So overclocking older CPUs and older hardware is really cheap and can be quite fun. And if you break stuff, it's easy to replace. The motherboard also was only about 47, and it's a pretty decent one. So with that though comes compromises. You're buying older hardware, it might not work in reality, or there could be problems with compatibility, especially considering on DDR3 systems, a lot of advances were made from the time that DDR3 was being first implemented in like x58 motherboards and LGA 1366, all the way to, well, let's just say x79. All right, those all use DDR3. Or AM3 Plus on AMD side. With using just DDR3, a lot of other things on the motherboards and the CPUs change themselves, so don't make my mistake and just keep using the same RAM configuration on everything regardless of how far back you go, because eventually you're going to run, well, or you could possibly run into something that's just too old to handle it. And with that, I think that's it for the video. Yeah, so if you like this video, like it. If you didn't like it, you can dislike it. Please comment down below. I won't ask you to subscribe yet, because who knows how many videos I'm actually going to put up here. Tell you what, if I get past 10 videos, then I'll ask you to subscribe. And with that, thank you for watching. I will catch you in the next one. This is Guardian XOC signing off.